Hi, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori at the Land of Color in Camp Chroma. And first, I want to thank everyone who has joined the webinar live. It looks like there's about 14 or 15 people that made it live. So you will get an email with replay. So if you miss anything, I'll try to talk slowly. I kind of have a habit of talking fast, so I'll try to slow down. I intended for this to be a recorded. Hi, Isabel from Barcelona. I love it when you guys leave comments and talk to me, by the way. I can see your comments live. They pop up right away. So if you have any questions or comments, just, put them in over there. But as I was saying, I kind of intended, I was thinking about recording this and doing a recorded webinar, but for one thing, I couldn't figure out how to do it. People assume that I'm like really technologically able, and I am to an extent, but I have my limits, and these webinars are like, they push my limits. So I just decided to do it live. So I do have a slide share prepared for you, and I don't really have a script. I'm just going to kind of hit some of the major points I want to hit. So this is, again, it's just live, and it's just real. How's that? It's just really real. And I didn't want to delay, and produce the whole video and everything, because this news is really big and I was excited to tell everyone. So this just seemed like the best way to do it. So let's just jump in and get started. Again, I have an online training program called Camp Chroma, and I started working on that about a year ago. And my passion, or my process, my approach, my color point of view really comes from a colorimetric, a color science point of view. I understand the numbers really well, and I don't shuffle paint chips. I use my paint chips right at the end after I've developed the palettes and I've developed the strategies. When I'm ready to take a look at the colors, the chips and the paint samples come in at the end when it's time to make decisions. And that's always been my approach. And that comes from my graphic design background, color management. I was there in the early 90s when color printers were first released to the market. And back then, we didn't have Google. We couldn't just, hop on the interwebs and ask questions and get the answers. We had books and we had manuals. And in order to get color out of the monitor, like off of your monitor and onto a piece of paper so everything matched, was a science. It was a skill. It's called color management. And that's where I learned a lot about color. That's where I learned a lot about color science and color measurements and how to apply that to a workflow. So when I got off the page from graphic design into architectural color, I was shocked at how the architectural color world did not leverage colorimetry. They, everyone just kind of had a flair for color, or have always had a passion for color, or that kind of intangible stuff, or they just kind of switch out paint chips looking for whatever matches the best, or all kinds of stuff. And I was gobsmacked. I just couldn't believe it. And that was true in 2004, and it's still true today. There's a huge gap. There's a huge opportunity for those who are interested to expand their color knowledge base. And in comparison to what has been done in architectural color, in comparison to the other methods and approaches that are out there, this is an extraordinary approach, right? Colorimetry, applying the science of color measurements and those values to an architectural color workflow is an extraordinary concept. So that's why Camp Chroma is where you master the practical application of extraordinary color expertise. And a couple things have happened this month that have made this more accessible, I should say, for more people. The tools have gotten better. The tools that used to be available only to color scientists and color managers printers in the graphics world have become available to the mass market, and that just happened this month. So let me tell you what's happened and what it means for you and how you can use it to streamline your workflow and your color design workflow. And that will mean that you can help more clients and you can do a better job helping them. And if you're interested in e-design, doing virtual work, this is really huge. Really, really huge. So let's talk about how things just got better in color world. And it's phenomenally better from my perspective in color world. I'm thrilled about this. So anyway, so let's start with the slide share. And like I said, let's see if this goes. It's game changing. It really is. I can't wait to share this with you. I'm going to teach you step by step how to use it, a couple of my favorite tricks. So you want to stick with me to the end, and you'll understand after I show you a couple of these really nifty color hacks, how much the whole platform of color design just changed. So it's going to, you're going to think about color differently. You're going to work with color differently, and you're going to talk about color differently. The conversation about color has forever changed in a big way. All of the old antiquated approaches, taking fan decks apart, rearranging them in different order, or counting the chips down on the strip and only using the third one down. Oh, let's see what else. Trying to match colors on various aspects or characteristics of colors that are intangible, like undertones. That's you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to try to do that anymore. And let me give you a little bit of backstory with my relationship with Variable. Variable is the maker of a node chroma. They came out with the first node chroma, I think, in 2014. And as soon as I saw this handheld colorimeter come out, I was all over that. A handheld colorimeter captures spectral data. You measure a color with it, and it captures the spectral data. And I'll tell you what that is here in a minute. We'll explain spectral data, and you'll understand it by the end of this webinar, I promise. So I developed an app to work with the node chroma as soon as it came out, to measure LRV and to do the calculation for the contrast ratio using LRV, because math is not my thing. And light reflectance value was a tool. I guess it's a tool. I don't know what else you would call it. But it was something that I learned about as a graphic designer. And calculating contrast ratios, really, I wasn't a slave to it, but it can help guide you in making color choices. For example, well, when I was a graphic designer, you always want to make sure you have the contrast ratio correct, the background color to the letter color for like signs. So there's different things in graphic design you use light reflectance for. And right now, the American Disability Association people, that whole sector that uses color for wayfinding, they're way into light reflectance values and ratios too. So light reflectance value has a whole big story. Oh, we could have a whole webinar on that, but I'll stop there. So when I saw the colorimeter come out in 2014, I developed an app to capture the LRV so you can measure color, and then you could also it would do the ratio for you, do the calculation so you could get the contrast ratio to see the color difference. The contrast difference is what that's all about. So I've been working with Variable for 2 years, and I've been through a couple evolutions as they've developed their device. They've made their colorimeter better. And this couple weeks ago, they came out with some really big news. They have come out with the newest version of their colorimeter called a Color Muse. Color Muse is significantly smaller. I don't know if you can tell in this picture how big the node was, but the node was about the size of a roll of Lifesavers. Actually, I have one right here. I wasn't planning on showing it. I wasn't planning on show and tell, but we'll add a show and tell because I can, because we're live, right? So here's a node chroma. You can kind of see how big it was. And so the variable people decided to make it better, more accurate, more smaller. And here's the Color Muse. You can see how much smaller it's gotten. I'll show you see? Wow, it's a lot smaller. So that's their big news. And the accuracy has improved. So that's big news for us too. So I also want to tell you that it's a lot more affordable. The Node Chroma, when they came out, they were like $200-300, something like that. I forget what it was. But this Color Muse, you can just order it from Amazon and it's $49. So now, like, you have this super powerful, like super color expert kind of tool for $50. This is like even homeowners who are remodeling or, repainting. This would be $50 well spent for them if you know how to use it, right? Which is why Camp Chroma exists, to teach people how to leverage these tools and this science. So I hope the sound is okay. I hope everyone can hear me. So I need to not move around too much. I need to stay close to the mic. So it's affordable. And when the new device came out, I, of course, immediately had the LRV Guru app revised so it works with the Color Muse. You can find the LRV Guru app on iTunes. For whatever reason, it's like in the iPhone only category. I had trouble finding it, but Apple is a whole adventure too. And I'll work on getting that so it's easier to find. But right now it's an iPhone only. It's on the iTunes store, and you can find the Guru app there. And the new version just was released by Apple yesterday, so it's fresh and ready to go to work with the Muse. And this is a game changer. The device, the Color Muse, being so affordable, being so accurate, being so easy to get your hands on, and working with a color-specific app like LRV Guru. I can't say that. I'm stumbling every time I say LRV Guru. It's a game changer. Everything just got easier, right? It's all one device. One device does it all. And when I say all, there's a couple more things that Color Muse is bringing to the table. And one of those things is the Color Muse app. So you have the Color Muse device, you have the LRV Guru app, and you also have the Color Muse app. So when you use the Color Muse app, you can use, it's called Inspect. One of the selections is Inspect Color. And when you choose Inspect Color from the Color Muse app menu, this is the window that you get. And I'm going to zoom in so you can see closer. So you put the Muse on the sample that you want to scan, and you tap Scan down here, and then you get these values, these color values. Well, the big selection, the most important selection in the Color Muse app from our perspective, from Camp Chroma's perspective, is LCH. LCH is a color space, and it comes from, it's calculated, converted from spectral data. You get from spectral data to the LCH color space. And L stands for lightness, C stands for chroma, and H stands for hue angle. And we're going to talk about all of these three things in detail. And by the end of the webinar, you are going to know how to get a readout on a color in these from the point of view of these three dimensions. They're called psychophysical dimensions, by the way. you're going to get a readout of the psychophysical dimensions of color within seconds. You're going to know the hue family, you're going to know overtones, you're going to know the lightness value, and you're going to know chromaticity. So how do we do that? Well, again, when the Color Muse scans a color, it captures the spectral data. Spectral data is like a color's DNA or a fingerprint. And specifically, what it captures is wavelengths, right? So when part of the spectral data in that whole kind of ball of wax of spectral data, what's in there are wavelength, amplitude, purity. And the wavelength is what determines hue, amplitude determines value, and purity determines chroma. So that's where we get hue, value, and chroma from spectral data. And there's a whole bunch that's oversimplified, by the way. There's a lot that goes on in between as far as equations, transformations, conversions. So this is the super streamlined executive summary for you. So that's essentially what happens. You scan a color with your Color Muse. It captures the spectral data. Part of some of the things that are in that spectral data are hue, value, and chroma. And then through the wonders of math, we can reduce that down to just these three psychophysical dimensions of color: hue, value, and chroma. And that's the fingerprint details. So a lot of people, I've heard a lot of, I don't know what to call it, concerns or concerns that this won't work, right? This will never work. A device will never replace the human eye. There's nothing like someone's subjective opinion. There's nothing like a quote unquote trained eye. Well, there kind of is. That's kind of a tough pill for some people to swallow, because this does challenge subjective opinions. So those who have, held on to the idea of they have this super special, eye for color, this will challenge you. It will challenge that. Why don't I just leave it at that? Suffice it to say, this is plenty accurate. So it's not a color lab, but the measurements that you get with the Color Muse give you reasonably informative guidelines, right? Reasonably informative guidelines is really important to remember. If you need LRV readings for some kind of a legal situation, which happens, by the way, or a formal presentation, you should use the LRV values directly from the manufacturer. Paint companies always provide LRV, and lots of materials now are starting to include LRV. So rely on the manufacturer's LRV data first, and use your colorimeter, your Color Muse, for reasonably informative guidelines. So it's super accurate, and the information we get from this is perfect for aesthetic work. It's perfect for design work. But if you need to, if you're having to meet specs for disability specifications or laws or that kind of thing, you really should be using more formal measurements. And if anybody needs a color lab, I know all kinds of people. So if you need a reference, I have that for you. But just for our everyday work, this is accurate, and it sees color better than a human eye does. It sees more. So let's talk about why it's better. For one thing, the Color Muse has a consistent light source. Its default setting is D50. D50 and D65 are like, it's a daylight quality of light. Around noontime, indirect light. D50 and D65 are really close in characteristics. If you take the course in Camp Chroma, we go into the detail between the two and what they're used for and why they're different. In most cases, in general, D65 is ideal for architectural color work. But like I said, the Color Muse has a default of D50. It shows up as lab values on the Color Muse app. They're fine to use. But my app, LRV Guru, I actually had it designed so it captures using a D65 illuminate. So the Color Muse default app is D50. The LRV Guru app uses illuminate D65. They're two different qualities of light sources, two different illuminants, but they're close, right? So we got that. Whatever one it's using, whichever one the Color Muse is using, either for the LRV Guru app or for the Color Muse app, it's a consistent light source, which is infinitely better than all of the infographics like you find on Pinterest, where people have put together colors by undertones. You know, they eyeball it and they say, well, this is a green undertone, this is a blue undertone. And then they make an infographic of like the 12 best grays from Benjamin Moore, and they categorize it by undertone. Well, what's the standard that they used to put those colors in those categories? Are they sitting at their kitchen table? Were they looking at the fan deck in their car? Right? You know, we have no idea what the situation was when these people decided to categorize these colors into green undertones, pink undertones, or whatever. You know, we don't know. They're just eyeballing it, right? And those opinions are just subjective. It's based on someone else's color acuity. It's based on someone else's experience with color. When you use a Color Muse to determine hue family, and I'm going to teach you how to do that, it's objective, right? It's an objective color point of view from a device that sees color, quote unquote, sees color better than a human being. And my phone's ringing. I didn't turn it off. That sees color better than a human being. So that's one way it's better. It's a controlled light source, and it blocks out ambient light, and it's objective. So let's move on. So when we capture the spectral data, when the Color Muse captures the spectral data, we have to convert that spectral data into a color space so it becomes more useful, so it becomes more relatable, more manageable. And one of those color spaces is LCH. LCH is one of my favorite color spaces. It was designed, premised on Munsell, on the Munsell color system. So that's why it's so adaptable, it's so relatable, and it's so manageable, is because they used the Munsell color system, hue, value, and chroma as the inspiration. And you can see the alignment of hue, value, chroma with lightness, chroma, and hue angle. So I know that looked really complicated. We talk about these graphs and these charts and these images that most of you have probably seen more than once. If you've ever Googled for information about color, you've seen diagrams that look like this. And we go over all of that in Camp Chroma, so you end up with a solid foundation of color knowledge. You don't, you know how to apply this information and these skills to your everyday workflow, but you also understand where it came from and how it all works. And with that foundation of color knowledge, you're in a position to innovate beyond just the skills I teach you. So if you're interested in learning more about the Camp Chroma courses, go to campchroma.com and just click on the black button, and you can go to the page for the Camp Chroma online training. And it's a big page with every detail, all the details, everything you could possibly want to know about our online class. And you do earn a color strategist badge at the end. So this is becoming so mainstream, like as of this month. This has become, this point of view, this color point of view has become so mainstream that I thought it was important to issue a credential at the end of the class so you have a way to let people know that you haven't just read a couple of blog posts, that you don't just have a couple really cool color hacks up your sleeve. This credential is intended to let people know that you really understand colorimetry and how it applies to choosing color for the built environment. So let's get back to the Color Muse app and the color values that it displays for you. Again, it displays values from the LCH color space, Lightness, Chroma, and Hue Angle. And this is the color wheel that I designed for my Camp Chroma online class. And what I did was, I actually kind of designed it for me first, to be honest. What I did was I took, I made a color wheel using the same hue families as Munsell did from the Munsell color system. And I merged it with the LCH degrees color wheel, because LCH gives you a hue angle, and an angle means degrees. A circle is 360 degrees. So you see how all this comes together. And it works out that you can fit Munsell hue families into the LCH hue angle circle, because LCH was premised on Munsell. So that was kind of a no-brainer for me. It's like, well, we need to put these two together, because a classic problem with colorimetry and these values, you know, spectral data values like lab values, LCH, CIE, XYZ, is that they're hard to relate to. People see those numbers like in this slide, you know, it's like LCH, what does this mean? It's kind of abstract and a little obtuse, and it's like, it's, how do I relate to that? So when I integrated the LCH color degrees with a color wheel with recognizable hue families, it made it a lot easier, right? So you even get to a point, the more you use this color wheel, you get to a point where you know that 90 degrees is yellow, and 180 degrees is the middle of the green, is the end of the green hue family. So you kind of like, you don't have to pull out, you get to a point where you don't have to pull out the color wheel every time. You can look at this hue angle number and know immediately, oh, that's up there near the middle of the red hue family, kind of a thing. And we'll walk through a couple examples doing this. So again, the hue angle and the LCH format tells you what hue family a color belongs to. But the other thing that it informs you about is overtones. So based on where the color falls on the wheel, you also get an indication of overtones, if it could have a hue bias one way or the other on the color wheel. And overtones, I'll read you the definition. Overtone, it's the secondary color that makes a color look the way it does. Overtone answers the question, which way clockwise or counterclockwise from the hue parent does a color lean when plotted on a color wheel? And another word for this is hue bias. And back to the color wheel again, when we plot it on a color wheel, we can get a sense of if it's going to have any overtones once it's up in the space. So that's overtones. So this is an example where we actually find the hue family on the color wheel using the example from the Color Muse app. In this case, this red color, the hue angle is 31.7. So when we plot it on the color strategist wheel, it's right here at 31.7. And we can see that it is towards the end of the red hue family, kind of over here near orange. So it's an orange red. It's just that simple. I'm pausing and thinking, should I be saying something else? And really, no, that's all there is to it. And then here's the orange example. Its hue angle is 45.6, and this is where it falls on the color wheel over here at 45.6. And this one is at the end of the orange hue family. So, you know, it's not at the end of the orange hue family. I'm sorry. It's almost to the middle of the orange. I'm looking at this really small. It's almost to the middle of the orange hue family. So it's kind of a true orange leaning towards red. That's what we can determine from plotting the orange color on the color wheel. So the other thing we can get from these values in the app very quickly is lightness. So that's the L, right, in LCH. So again, it's correlated to the Munsell color system. A lot of people have been trained on the Munsell color system in college and high school. Some, if you've had a really good art teacher, like I did in 7th grade, they taught you about the Munsell color system. So this is something that many people can relate to. And if you can't relate to it, it's worthwhile to learn more about Munsell. I do have a module in Camp Chroma where I do a deep dive into different color systems. NCS, for one, natural color system in Sweden. I do the master palette that you can find at the Home Depot, which is, you know, that blows people away. One of the best color systems around can be found on paint chips at your local Home Depot. It's amazing. It's true. And also, of course, the Munsell color system, we talk about that in depth in Camp Chroma. So back to the values and back to the quick color hack with the Color Muse app. When you scan a color and you get the LCH values, for the lightness value, these numbers 40 and 57, again, a little abstract. What do they mean? Kind of hard to relate to, but you need to know. What helps a little bit is to know that the lightness scale goes from 0 to 100, but that's still kind of a big, you know, there's still color gymnastics that you have to do, visualizing a scale from 0 to 100 and where does 40 and 50 fall. So an easy way to make this, to reduce it down so it's easier to process mentally, is to divide your lightness values by 10. When you divide the lightness value by 10, you get an equivalent Munsell value. And the Munsell value steps are only 0 through 10, right? So that's much easier to remember. This is much easier to do in your head mentally. So when we divide the first color, 40.3 by 10, we know that it's a Munsell value of 4 on the Munsell grayscale. When we divide the orange color by 10, it's right between 5 and 6. We'll call it 5.5 on the Munsell value scale, right? So lightness and these values just got simpler. The hue angle, the hue family, and overtones just got simpler. And we can do the same with chroma. We can. So all we have to do with chroma is divide it by 5. So when we divide 63.95, we get 12. So the chromaticity of this red color is a chroma of 12 on in the Munsell color system. And when we divide the orange color by 12, it comes out to 14. So when we see 12 and 14, we know that those are really saturated colors, and obviously they are. And I chose to use these just because they show up well in video, right, in a webinar. But you can get the chromaticity steps, the intensity, the vividness. You can know that in a matter of seconds once you get build your proficiency with these scales, right? So it's all about proficiency. First of all, it's learning how to do this. It's like learning the skill to begin with, and then it's a matter of proficiency. So by the time you once you know how to do this and you've done it a couple times and you realize that with your Color Muse, you can scan any color you want to, and within a matter of seconds, you can know its lightness, its chromaticity, and it's hue angle and overtones, it's pretty amazing, right? And we're talking seconds, we're not talking minutes. When you understand how to read these values, when you have the skill set to read these values and translate that to your workflow, you can do amazing things. What this solves, the problems that this solves, is so many people struggle trying to identify what a color is, like, you know, the whole undertone thing, or what color is this going to be when I get it in my space? Or, you know, which one's more vivid, which one's more dull, which one's lighter? I want a color, I want this color, but I want it lighter. How do you know which one's lighter? Well, instead of comparing chips, right, which is what everybody's had to do up until now, is just compare chips to each other, you can compare the values. You can just look at the scale, and it's like, I loved this, you know, color Revere Pewter, but it's too dark in my space. You have two data points to go by now, LRV and lightness value, and you want to look for a color that's lighter than Revere Pewter based on the numbers. So it's just so much more efficient. And in Camp Chroma, I teach you how to do searches on libraries of colors. So you can search online color libraries using these values and search out the color that you're looking for. Drill it down to specifics. You know, if you want a color that's, if that red was too red, you know, if it's too orange red that we were looking at, this red right here, I show you in Camp Chroma how to use the online libraries to look for a red that is more purple, has a little more red purple to it, so it's not so red orange. So you can get really specific with your colors and your searches, and you don't have to shuffle chips anymore, and you don't have to do the color formula thing anymore. So many people online especially talk about cutting formulas, doubling formulas, looking at the colorants on the side of a can, trying to determine what the color is or what it's going to look like. It's just ridiculous. It's just, you know, I guess I've never streamlined those things down to a point where it was worth my time. It was always, especially cutting formulas and trying to figure out the colorant game, it gets expensive really quickly because they just don't cut the formula for you at the paint store. And then if you don't like the color, you know, oh, well, you have to buy that can of paint, right? So adding white, cutting the formula, it's craziness. And I'm convinced that people do that because they haven't, you know, there's not another way. They haven't had another way. That's the only choice they've had. And when you don't have a background in color expertise, you don't realize that there are other options to analyze a color. There are other data points to analyze a color than the colorants in the formula. So when your only exposure has been to a paint can and the whole paint experience, you think everything about that color is, you know, included on the sticker on the side of that can, and that's all you have to work with. And that's not true. It's bigger than that. It's always been bigger than that, but it just got more accessible and easier for everyone to manage this week. So if you're interested in what some of the people who have completed the Camp Chroma course are saying, just go to campchroma.com/testimonials, and you can see their input. You can see what some of my past students have had to say about their time with me and in Camp Chroma. So that's, does this work with NCS as well? Isabel asked me that. NCS actually have branded the Color Muse. They're calling it Color Pin. So NCS does have their own handheld colorimeter. It's a Color Muse. They're just calling it Color Pin, and it's loaded with their color library. So yeah, I don't know what their app, shows, but I doubt if NCS is going to include LCH in their app. You're welcome, Isabel. Does anybody else have any questions? So let me see if there's anything else. I thought there was something else I wanted to talk about. Oh, e-design. Someone asked me about e-design. They sent in a question earlier after I sent the invitation. How this can help you if you want to do color consultations online is for exteriors in particular. I prefer to do exteriors. I don't do a whole lot of interiors online anyway. But you can actually send, like it's only $50, right? You can send a Color Muse to your client and have them scan the materials that you have to work with on the exterior, the permanent fixed elements, like the gutters, you know, it's classic. You can't change the color of the gutters, or the hardy plank siding. You can have a Color Muse sent to them, have them measure the color of the hardy plank siding. You can get those values, those color values, and you'll know what color you have to work with without ever being there. You can just use the numbers. You can just use the data. And if if your client wants to keep the Color Muse, that's fine. If they want to send it to you and you can give them a credit or something like that, you know, however you want to work it. Or if you just want to work in the Color Muse as part of your architectural color consulting fee, that's probably what I would do, right? So you don't have to rely on the client to give you feedback about the colors of the permanent elements that you have to work with. You don't have to ask them to go get a fan deck. If you know, lots of people make their clients go buy a fan deck. Well, the fan decks are $35, right? So instead of making them go buy a Benjamin Moore fan deck in order for you to do their exterior color consultation or even their interior color consultation, send them a Muse or make them get a Muse. It's just a few bucks more. And it's like 10 times more, well, 10 times, it's 1,000 times more accurate than having your client try to eyeball it and tell you that, you know, well, the color of the stone kind of looks like bleaker beige. Really? You can use the Color Muse and you can know what the stone looks like. Much, much, much simpler. I wanted to tell you about some of the bonuses that I have right now going on for Camp Chroma. I don't have a slide for this. This is only for you guys who are here and listening to the replay to know. I just didn't want to put it out there too soon, but I'm including bonuses this time with Camp Chroma. I have a new group session starting on the 14th. Included with your Camp Chroma tuition, you are going to get a download of LRV Guru. It's iOS only. You are going to get a Color Muse for free. You are going to get, of course, the Color Strategist wheel. You can download that. And also an Affinity color fan deck that has the Munsell notation stickers on the back of it. So I went through the whole Affinity deck and I did the notations for you, and the stickers are on the back of each of those chips. And we use the Affinity fan deck in one of our exercises in Camp Chroma. So you get the app, you get the Color Muse, you get the color wheel, and you get an Affinity fan deck with color notations on the back. So, and you send them worldwide, Lori. Isabel, you know, I don't know if any of you know, but I've been selling paint blue color samples, color formulas and samples online for 10 years. I can ship anything, anywhere. I have shipped those samples all over the world. So yes, I will ship the fan decks and the Color Muse and whatever it takes wherever I need to. The mail system and the shipping system is no challenge for me. Webinars are more of a challenge for me than shipping. So Ruth says, I saw the color notebook at Home Depot once. It was beautiful. How might I acquire one? I don't know what the color notebook is. You might be talking about the master palette. There's a big book of color that's usually bolted to the end of an aisle someplace in the paint department in every Home Depot. And the big book of color is just the master palette fan deck. So you can ask them for a master palette fan deck, and it has the same information in it. It has the color notations and all that stuff. And again, in Camp Chroma, we talk about, yes, it is the master palette. Well, that's what you want then. Just ask for a fan deck, and it has the notations on the chips. And we talk about how to use the master palette and its notations, because it's a different color system. It's a special system that Glidden uses. We talk about that in detail in Camp Chroma too, as well as Pantone. We talk about the Pantone color naming system. So you end up with a well-rounded color education at the end of Camp Chroma. And so you can go forward and know what you're talking about in just about any situation in just about any color industry. It doesn't just apply to architectural color. With Camp Chroma, can I learn the Munsell system? I do teach you the Munsell system. It's an executive summary type, but you end up knowing how to use it and what it is and where it came from. It's possible to go deeper with the Munsell color system because there's more to it. It's really not that complex, you know? So the executive summary that I give you in Camp Chroma, you'll know what you're talking about, and you'll know how to use it at the end of that module, which is my goal. With course one, this is just course one that I have offered right now. Again, you can just go to campchroma.com to get all of the details. There's a syllabus for all of the lessons. You can go there and get all of the details, but I try not to overwhelm you too much in this first 8 weeks, because this is an extraordinary approach to color. It is unlike anything else. This isn't the same conversation that we've been having about undertones. This isn't the same conversation that we've been having about count the strips in the fan deck kind of things. This isn't the same, you know, in a room you want 60% of this color, 30% of that. This isn't those standard memes. This is a different skill set. So I try to give you exactly what you need, so you have a good foundation and you walk away with skills that you can start using immediately. But we can certainly, I certainly intend to expand on this at some other time. There's more to Camp Chroma than just course one, but right now we just have course one up and offered. So it is 12 o'clock, and we've been on here for almost an hour. So I want to thank everyone for your time. Again, if you want more information about Camp Chroma, just go to campchroma.com, and all of the details are there. Thank you, Mary Ruth. I love you too. Mary Ruth has been my online friend forever. I met her on the HGTV forums. I don't want to say how long ago, Mary Ruth. It's been a long time. If you've ever been online, I go by Fun Colors. I've participated in several online decorating forums, so that's what I'm talking about with Mary Ruth. I met her on a decorating forum, and we've been online friends for a really long time. I have a lot of friends like that. I love the idea of overtones. Oh, overtones. Yeah, I don't do the undertones thing. Now, undertones are about density. You see undertones when you spread a color thinly. That's undertones. And then there's mass tones, which, is about density as well. The medium is so thick that you can't see through the medium to the substrate below. Undertones, you can see the substrate below, and it contributes to the overall color that you see, the color sensation that you see. And midtones are about density as well. It's just the Goldilocks of density. It's the perfect film thickness. It's also about how dense is the gray, or how dense is the gray not, right? It's about grayness. So we talk about mass tone, undertone, what is it? Mass tone, undertone, midtone, and overtones. We go into detail in that in Camp Chroma 2. You walk away with a new perspective on what all of that means and how all of those go together. You can't have undertones hanging out here all by itself and not correlate to the other tones. There's mass tone. It's like they're all related. It's an interrelated concept. So it tells a whole story, right? When you have mass tones, undertones, midtones, and overtones, it tells a complete color story. There's a whole story there. So it's not fragmented, and it's easier to understand that way. I learned color in college with color aid paper and the Munsell system many years ago. Many people were trained on Munsell many years ago. A lot of people know Munsell, which is why LCH being included in the Color Muse app is really amazing, because a lot of people can relate to this, and they understand quickly that if you can scan a color within seconds and get a readout of lightness, chroma, and hue angle, you can know everything you need to know about a color in a matter of seconds, and it's right, it's accurate. It's not just somebody else's opinion telling you that it's, has green undertones and stuff like that. It's a whole different ballgame, which is exactly why I've been saying this is extraordinary and this is a game changer. It's going to challenge a lot of people. It's going to challenge what a lot of people have thought or have been taught about color in the past. And it's kind of hard to argue with data, right? Without data, you're just another person with an opinion, as the saying goes. This is data. And we have to remember that we can't just color by numbers alone. That's an important thing to remember. But this skill set, these techniques, and these tools are an incredible framework for your creative eye. That's the best way to put it. It's a framework for your creative eye. You have something to hang your creative hat on now, whereas before, you really didn't. It was just your opinion. It was just your flair for color. This makes it a lot more tangible, right? This brings a lot more tangibility to the profession of architectural color consultant. No more magic about color. Nope. The mysterious, the mysterious intangible stuff. I guess if that's your color point of view and you like to be in that space with color, then that's fine. But people need to know that there's a choice, right? That's not the only approach. Anything else? Oh, what about a white background? I've seen you say before, never to compare color to white. Nope, don't ever compare color to white. It's bad. When you compare color against a white background, you will be misled as far as the color's inherent brightness and lightness. Lightness and brightness are correlated. Brightness and lightness are kind of the same thing. But I look great on camera. Mary Ruth, you're too nice to me. Lightness and brightness are kind of the same thing. When you compare a color against white, it's going to deceive you, and you're going to underestimate how bright the color, your target color, is, because compared to a bright white, it's going to look less bright, right? That only makes sense. It's common sense. White's the brightest. So, and choosing colors that are too bright or brighter than people thought they were is one of the biggest mistakes people make when choosing paint colors for their home. So a white background's not going to help you out. But we use a white background to determine what to see undertones. You have to use a white background to see undertones. Don't do undertones, right? You don't have to do undertones. You can use hue angle and figure out what hue family it belongs to, and overtones based on where it plots out on the wheel. And once you know the hue family, you can also take it, the step beyond here, going a little more advanced, is once you have hue angle, then you can start working on color schemes and color palettes and color relationships, because color relationships are informed by the geometry of a color wheel. So if you're talking how colors relate, if you're talking about color relationships, you are by default talking about a color wheel, right? So you don't have to do it that way. So you can lose the white background and you can start thinking about color in a different way, really. Can the Color Muse read full spectrum colors? Oh, full spectrum colors, Barbara Dale. I love full spectrum colors. That is a juicy, super technical topic. Yes, the Color Muse can read full spectrum colors. It's going to give you a hue family for that full spectrum color. It's going to give you a lightness value for that full spectrum color, and it's going to give you a chromaticity value for that full spectrum color. But there is a bigger story to tell with full spectrum colors than its spectral data. How's that? Full spectrum stories have bigger color stories to tell than just their color, than just their spectral data. And again, you know, I'm a big proponent of the art and science of color. We can't color by numbers alone. There are other things to consider, and full spectrum paint colors fit in that category of other things to consider. Okay. Oh, there's a couple more popping up here. Let me scroll down and see where the new ones are. Love that this course relates to clients and actual use of color. Yeah, it doesn't get any more specific than spectral values. Some people call them colorimetric values. So, you know, once you get from the raw spectral data to the breakdown, some people call it colorimetric data too. So you'll hear that. Any other questions? The LRV Guru, what illuminate? The LRV Guru captures at a 2-degree observer a D65 illuminate, and the ratio calculates for a 70% guideline, which is the American guideline. There's also an Australian guideline called the Bowman-Sapolinsky formula, but my app doesn't do that. Does it work on Android? No. LRV Guru app is iOS only. Hopefully, maybe later this year, I'll expand it so that it works on Android and might even include the other calculation, the Bowman-Sapolinsky calculation. Let's see, do we have any other questions? I don't think we do. We're coming up on our hour here. Thank you for staying with me. Everybody that joined in the very beginning stayed with me to the very end. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for opening my emails, my MailChimp emails. I try not to bother you guys too much with information. You'll be seeing a little bit more from me in the coming months because I'm going to try to make more blog posts. It's because there's so much to talk about. You guys are bother away. Thank you. All right. Well, if you guys have any questions after the webinar, just let me know. Again, that Camp Chroma page is just like one of those super long marketing pages, landing pages. That's a whole story too. I could go on forever about building Camp Chroma. Was a project in and of itself. Getting the content done was like falling off a log for me. Easier than I had that. But I want to make it better. But the whole marketing thing, man, I tell you guys what, when you go see that landing page, you'll know what I mean. It's like, and what else do you want from me to put on this page? I mean, it's like, are people going to scroll through that whole long page and read everything? And people do. So I put everything over there that I could possibly think of. But if I missed something, just send me an email. I'd be happy to answer you. So I'm going to sign off. Thanks a lot, everyone. The replay will be up in a little bit. So until next time, bye.